upload on YouTube, I can make a one channel there and I will upload on the YouTube also. So if anytime you can go back, you can read many time and you can check all these things. So uh, in this lesson we are going to describe about how the user request is being processed in ABAP system. So very important lesson. We are going to see, first we have understood the architecture, we have understood what are the different types of instances, what is SAP server. Now we will see how the request is being processed, how the user is running, what is happening at the background, uh, what are the things are happening. So how the user is coming, user is using SAP GUI. So suppose I will say I am login with user ID train dash 01. This is my user ID. I am login through SAP GUI. I am having a Windows machine. I am having a Windows operating system. In this, I am having uh, Windows machine, and I am having SAP GUI software. I am trying to connect to the SAP. So what is happening here? We will try to understand those things. So with SAP GUI, whenever we are going to connect, what is happening? The request is coming from SAP GUI to the application server. In application server, it is also going to a particular component. It is going to a particular component. The component name is dispatcher. The request is coming to the dispatcher is running in a particular application server. This is application server or instance, you can say. Uh, Here we are having the work process. We are having so dispatcher will assign a dialog work process uh, to me. Train 01, suppose I just give you one example here. Train dash 01 creating a sales order. Train 01 is creating a sales order. He login into his machine, SAP GUI, try to connect it to the server, and this is the server. This is SUSE Linux server. SUSE Linux server. On SUSE Linux server, we are having, this is our instance number. Instance number was 11, and the system ID was S4D, and we have the database also here. We got HANA database. HANA database is also running on SUSE Linux. Okay, so now user is going to create a sales order. So when the dispatcher is assigning a process to me to train 01, so the user related data will be loaded into the dialog work process. So user related data is stored into the buffer. We have different types of buffer. We are having a CUA buffer, we are having program buffer, we are having screen buffer, we are having lot of type of buffers are there. So what is happening? So first, whenever a user is going to perform any task, user related data will be loaded here, from here to here. That is known as user context. User context is nothing, user authorization. Whether user is able to create the sales order or not, user related data will be loaded from here to the dialog work process. If this data is not here into the buffer, the data will be loaded from here. If data is not here, it will be it can be loaded from the database. It can be loaded from the database. If it is loaded from the buffer, the time is 0.1 millisecond to 1 millisecond. millisecond. If it is going to access the database, the time would be 1 millisecond to 100 millisecond. 100. So that's why you as a basis consultant, you have to monitor the buffer. The transaction code to monitor the buffer is ST02. You have to check the buffer. There should be not too much swapping should be there. If buffer is not enough, the process has to communicate with the database, and it is going to take uh, much more time. It is going to take 100,000 times more. So what is happening? Train 01 user ID is going to log in through SAP GUI. Request come to the dispatcher. Dispatcher is assigning a dialog work process. Dialog work process is going to get the data from here, and then it is going to process the data. So the time from here to here and coming back from here to here, the request goes from SAP GUI and then request come back to the SAP GUI. It is known as response time. Yes. We can identify where is the problem. If suppose we don't have enough dialog work process, we will be having wait time. The wait time will be increased. This is known as wait time. If uh, we don't have much CPU on the CPU processing power, we will be having processing time. CPU time will be high. Processing time will be high. If there is a problem with the database, we will be having database time. DB time will be high. So we can further analyze those things, and then we can uh, uh, understand where is the exact problem. So this architecture is very important. From request come to the dispatcher. Dispatcher will assign the process. Process will communicate with the database, and the whole response time. Okay. Now I am logging into the SAP system. I am running a T code VA01. Create sales order. What is the response time? This is the response time. 94 millisecond it has taken. Very fast. 94 millisecond. Because this is a very small T code. Now I am running a DBA cockpit. Another T code. Now it is taking some time because it is fetching a lot of data. How much time it has taken? It has taken 2 seconds. 2188 millisecond. It has taken 2188 millisecond. Yes, it depends on. Yeah, yes. Whether the things are buffered or not buffered. So whenever you are going to restart the system, lot of data has to be buffered, and that's why buffering is very very important. So we can identify in ST02 the buffers. We are having program buffer, CUA buffer, screen buffer, and the data has been processed by the dialog work process. So buffering is very very important topic. So in case of performance tuning, if you want to see, you can go to the detail analysis menu. We have lot of options here. Uh, we can go to the SAP memory. We can check even which user is consuming how much memory. Like train 02. Train 02 is consuming 14 MB memory. Train 03 is consuming 27, because maybe train 03 has open multiple session. Like here, train 02 is having only 14 and train 3 is consuming 27. 27 is okay, but suppose somebody is consuming too much memory. You have given 4 GB of memory to the extended memory, and some user is consuming 2 GB of memory. How they can consume? Because they might be open multiple sessions. They have multiple sessions open, and so you can restrict on the sessions. If I just go and check SM04 train 03, priority high, memory 31, system setup 4 session. I have opened 4 session. Obviously if I am opening multiple sessions, memory consumption will be
consuming the memory.
Yes, consuming the memory.
Actually, I can see the data on the detailed screen, but
Mhm.
is there is a method or something to calculation that can enable us to understand more how to figure there is a problem in here. Yani I can see that I'm using 31 from the memory, but what does this mean?
it means you are using you are using one user is assigned to one work process, so this work process is consuming this much memory. So this is enough. Suppose you assign like 30 GB, 40 GB is okay, 40 MB, this is in MB. Suppose a user is consuming 200 MB, 300 MB memory, so you have a limited resource. Like, okay, with this picture you can understand here we are having the buffers and buffers because this is related to your RAM memory. So here we are having the limitation. You cannot give much more than a specific limit. You have specified 4000 MB, 4 GB, and there are suppose 10 users are or 20 users are going to log in. 20 users are going to log in, and each user is consuming 20 users are going to log in into this server, and we are having 4 GB of RAM. But some users, so average for each user is around 20 MB. But suppose some users are consuming 2000 MB, then it's a problem. Then it's a problem. You have to check what report they are running, what are the activities they are going to perform. So you can just constrain the activities of those users.
Okay, I got it. So reference to the total
Hmm.
MB or GB that
Hmm.
is used for the buffer and the database, I can figure the problem reference to this.
Yes, so you can figure
Okay,
that.
there is a way that can I know how much the buffer total amount or that being implemented?
Yes, yes, you can, like by default it is like automated. When you are going to install the SAP system, it will automatically take the memory, like here the memory, extended memory percentage, it is given 5. Then extended
Yeah, this
memory,
is the total memory. Yeah.
yeah, this is the, again in the memory we have subparts. We are having extended memory, global memory, uh, we are having heap memory. So this is subpart. So you can say if total buffer size, you can say 4 to 5 GB, you can set up 4 to 5 GB of total buffer size you can. Then we will be having subpart, like programs will be loaded into the program buffer. All the programs will be loaded into the program buffer. There's a hit ratio. Hit ratio means whenever we are executing any program, 99% they have find into the buffer. If the hit ratio is less, there is a problem. Means at that time the data has to retrieve from the database. So from ST02 you can understand what is the hit ratio. Hit ratio should be above than 95%. If it is below than 95%, it is the problem related to your buffers. Either you don't have much buffer or there is not properly configured. So as a basis consultant, we have to come here and we have to do monitor the buffers, and we have to see the swaps. If swapping is much, swapping means the data is not found here. So it has to collect it from the database. If it is going to collect it from the database, obviously, if the data has to collect from the database, the time will be increased 1 to 100 millisecond. If the data is here, everything is in buffer, it will be fast. So everything depends on how you are going to give the parameters related to buffer, how you are going to uh, optimize your system, and how you have configured your system. Okay, so that is our next lesson, describing as an ABAP system how the so we have different ways to connect. The request come to the dispatcher. Dispatcher assign the work process, dialog, upgrade, background. They are going to connect to the database, and if uh, they can find the data from the buffer, the speed would be very very fast. So this is the whole procedure. SAP GUI request come to the dispatcher. Dispatcher, you have to wait until or unless they will get a assign a work process. Under work process, this is the internal architecture of work process. Under work process, each work process have some internal memory. Each work process require 130 MB to 150 MB of memory. Then we have the ABAP interpreter. So user want to perform some task, so user related data will be roll in from the buffers. This is the buffer, application buffer, extended memory, user context will be roll in. Then uh, the work process will get the objects from the application buffer and process the data for the particular user. So ABAP dispatcher, like suppose you are selecting something from a particular table, it will connect with the database interface, it will get the data from the buffer. If not find in the buffer, it will try to find it from the database. So dialog request processing, a program dialog step is assigned to a one specific dialog work process during execution. The individual dialog step for a program consistent of several screens can be executed by different work process. So you might be thinking that one work process is assigned to you. No, one work process is not assigned to you. One work process can accommodate multiple users. Only the screen is processed by one process. So you can just identify with this method. Okay, I am running a T code SU01. I am typing my user. I want to create a user ID training. What is my screen number? Are you able to see? What is the screen number? Visible?
What is the screen number here?
Yeah, what is the screen number? Are you able to see? Number you are able to
Yeah,
see?
I can see it.
Yeah, what is number? 1050, right?
1050.
Right, right. So now I am on this, I'm in the same T code. I am in SU01 T code, but I am having the screen. Now suppose I am just sitting idle, I am doing nothing. Now I am going to another screen. My screen number got changed or it would be same? Are you able to see what is my screen?
Change it. Yeah.
Yeah, change. So dialog work process is not like assigned to me until or unless I complete my task. Maybe I can take half an hour to create a user ID. So for half an hour, the dialog work process will not be assigned to me. It is only assigned for a specific time when I am just performing a particular task. So now I have moved to another screen. So the work process has been released. This work process, maybe work process 1 is assigned to me during initial time. Now whatever the work process is free, it is assigned to me. So work process is not assigned to you for long time. It is only assigned to a specific time, because maybe you are sitting idle, you are not doing anything, you are just like, so if it is going to assign to you for the longer duration, it would be a idle situation. So that is known as multiplexing, work process multiplexing. So here you can
So
see,
until you enter all the data and press the creation button,
yeah,
all this time the screen is not assigned with a buffer or any memory.
yes, yes, it is not even it is
It's not
not,
a dialog process, you mean?
it is a dialog process, but it is like here you can see process before screen you are having is, so it is listened by the work process 0, then again you got another screen, it is listened by the work process number 2. Suppose I am entering some data here. Okay, I'm putting last name Singh, and I go this tab, I go this tab, and in between I cancel my, all the time the data is getting, but this data is going to get into the temporary location. I now cancel this one. So the user ID not created, training user ID not created. This data got into the temporary location. When we submit, only then the data is written into the exact tables. Otherwise, the data is not going to be written. So this is known as logical unit of work. When we complete all the task, all the screen input, when we do input, then only the data is written into this one. Otherwise, in between, the data is written into the temporary tables. That is known as VB tables.
PTP اللي هي buffer before screen.
Buffer is not used. This is for like temporary purpose. When we are editing something, when we are seeing the data is coming from the buffer.
PBO stands for what?
Pardon?
PBO stands for what?
PBO is process before output, process after input, process before output, process before output. So process before output, you are having the screen. Process after input, you enter something data, work process 1 is assigned, then process before output, you are having a screen number different, then again you are entering the data, until that work process is going to, and then it is going to access the database access. You are having different tables. You can identify with this one. When I am creating a user id, so user related data is stored into multiple tables. This data, address data, is stored into usr02 table. This data is stored into usr03 table. This data is stored into usr04 table. This data is stored into this table. But this data is not directly inserted until or unless when I complete the whole transaction. In between, the data is going into the temporary table. That tables are known as VB tables.
Okay, got it.
Got it?
So this is called the logical sequence of
Yes, logical
works.
sequence. So this is known as LUW, logical unit of work. This is SAP logical unit of work. Okay, so now we have exercise number 7. In this exercise, you have to see the work processes SM50 T code, and you have to check the status of the different work processes.